You over there, yeah you. Do you like old anime? Don't worry, we're not making fun of you millennials this time around. This isn't one of those. You watched Lucky Star as a kid, you know that came out almost 20 years ago, right? Or something like that. No. This time around, we're actually going to be talking about an event that actually celebrates actually all anime. And by that, I'm talking about anime as well as all parts of otaku culture that come from the 60s to the 90s. No, I'm not old, okay? No. But either way, this is an event called the Shoujo Paradise. So, like Beautiful Girl Paradise would be probably the English translation of this name. And as you can see from the cover itself, it is an event that celebrates most of the otaku culture that comes from the 60s to the 90s. So everything from something like Creamy Mami, if you're into the... No, that's not meant to be a cis name. To things like Dark Angels, maybe you like some of the older mecha stuff like Mazinger and the like. Or maybe you're into stuff from the 90s like... Wait, was Cardcaptor Sakura that old? Oh, what the fuck? Cardcaptor was from the 90s. Shit, maybe I am old. But that's it. It's an event that was actually, in many ways, quite surprising to me because in spite of the fact that it's celebrating a large part of the older anime scene, it was an event that was actually a lot more packed than I thought it would be. So the event itself was held in Kawasaki at the Kawasaki City Industrial Promotion Hall. On one of the upper floors, they basically have an exhibition hall, and the event basically used the exhibition hall. There were a total of 75 circles there, so actually not a too bad number for a smaller scale event, since I have seen events, even Blue Archive events for that matter, that have gone down all the way to 20 circles. So suffice to say, there are events that are much smaller in size, although I would say this is still somewhere under the average, like medium-sized event, which would be maybe around 2 to even 400 circles as well. But either way, a pretty healthy number. And what was also very surprising is not only were there a lot of circles at the event, but there were also quite a lot of people attending it. Like, it was actually so packed at points within the event itself that I was actually having problems walking around and trying to get through the event itself as well. And from what I'm gathering, looking at their announcement on Twitter, it would seem that the next hosting of the event is going to be back in the PIO Center, which is the one where many of the medium-sized events such as Punicat, as well as some of the other medium-sized events that can host up to 300 to 400 circles such as Superhero in Time were actually hosted. So for all we know, it actually might be a much larger scale event the next time around. That said, the reason why it quite likely was not hosted at the PIO Center this time around is because at the time of me recording this and for the last few months, the building itself has been undergoing renovation. So most of the events that would usually be held there are unable to be held in the location itself, and so that's probably why they had a much smaller hosting at the building at Kawasaki instead. Also, for those who are interested in the history of the event, even though it is an event celebrating the 60s to the 90s of anime and otaku culture in general, the event itself only really started back in 2022. So even though it has only been around 4 years, there are reason why there's 9 hostings of the event is because it's held multiple times a year. So the previous time I went to this event this year was actually on the 11th of January, and the next time they're going to be holding it is in May. So, you know, multiple holdings a year, and therefore it actually has multiple counts towards the title of the event, hence why it actually goes up pretty fast as well. That said, overall as an event, it was actually very interesting to see something that was actually fully dedicated to all the anime as well, since for those of you especially who watch a lot of the older as well as the newer anime both, you would notice that a lot of things, especially the way that they use colors, the strength and the aggressiveness of the coloring has changed a lot over the years, as well as the style of the character designs and the art in general has also changed quite a fair bit over the generations. And as a result, it was really cool seeing an event where everything was just dedicated to the older years of anime. Like, personally for me, there's just something about especially the 90s to the 80s era of anime that for some of it, like the art for Dark Angel for example, that just hits a little different, even for something like Patoreba or the more mecha stuff in general. One thing I do notice is that a lot of the art actually tends to be a lot more detailed in a very different, more mechanical way, especially for some of the more post-Gundam mechas as well. And one other thing that was also pretty interesting was the fact that many of the artists as well as the animators who worked on the mangas as well as the animes for that period were also at the event. So you actually managed to see some of the people who were heavily involved in it. In fact, the person who wrote the manga for the Dark Angels series as well was actually at the event itself and was actually selling like hand-drawn shikishi shikishi's, so not the usual like printed ones where you kind of just make the first copy and then you make multiple copies and have those sort of event. Rather, he was actually selling those, and I think they were going for like almost 60,000 yen, so very pricey, but considering how big the person was at the time and the fact that it was all actual hand-drawn ones as well, I guess it kind of makes sense for the price as well. The other thing about the event that surprised me quite a fair bit was also the fact that there were actually many people coming in from overseas for the event. Like, I actually saw quite a few people at the event who looked like they were in their 40s, probably like, fucking old. I shouldn't be making that joke, you know. Be there soon enough myself, but suffice to say, there were a lot of people who actually came in for the event visiting as well. Like, I saw many people who looked like they were coming in from Europe in particular, who were just like walking around buying stuff as well. So it was actually really interesting to see the balance in spite of the fact that the event itself is not that massive, and due to the fact that the event is also fairly new, so the fact that many people have actually caught on to the fact that this event was being run and were quite interested in the event itself was also something that was quite fun and interesting to see. In terms of the stuff that was being displayed at the event, needless to say, doujins, like the doujin sheet itself, the books themselves, are something that is a very common staple. But compared to other events, I feel like there were quite a lot of circles that were mostly focused on selling like shikishis as well as the art posters instead, which is something that I find to be a lot less common in general. Like, even with something like Comic Cat, for example, with something like that in particular, rather, I feel like there's just so many circles that focus on selling books instead. And even for circles that don't sell books, many of them typically go into things like accessories. Like with the Toho Reitai community as well, you tend to see a lot of things like shot glasses, whiskey, people actually preparing their own like jewelry and the like as well. Like, I have this thing right here as well. Like, this is also from Reitai, so you tend to see a lot more of that. But at this event, it was mostly either books or shikishi, which I feel like shikishis, while you do see them here and there in many events, they tend not to be super common either. So it was a little bit of a surprise seeing as much of just specifically like art boards as well as posters being sold at the event. And I'm not joking when I say that there's actually a lot of stuff there from people who are fairly big within the space as well, especially for those who are interested in that era of content in general. For example, I have here with me the concept art book collection for the series Cotton, and this was actually done by the creator of the character design for the series itself, Tamura Hideki, who has basically worked on most of the series at the time and is an animator as well as game developer in Japan. It actually is pretty detailed, some of it actually having like the usual, for those of you who are very interested in the concept reference books as well, some of the details pointing out the things that they want animated or colored in the specific scenes as well. So personally, for me, like, this kind of reference books, maybe not so much for myself to use now, but they do feel like they'll come in handy sometime, especially as reference for designs and to like explain things to people if there ever is a need. So both that and the fact that it actually details a lot of the thought process that the creator went through while actually creating the characters as well as animating the scene was something that I found to be pretty interesting. For those who are wondering more about his animation career or who already know who the guy is, he actually worked on some of the animation for the Fist of the North Star as well as Urusei Yatsura back in the day, but unfortunately he didn't really have any of the concept designs for all of that, most likely because he's just doing the animation for it. But with these, like specifically with Cotton, he was the character designer himself, so he had a lot for the stuff that he worked on directly, but yeah, unfortunately there wasn't any for the rest of the stuff. Either way, I found it really cool that he just was there with a circle just selling his own like concept art collection for the series as well. And he wasn't the only one, since the creator of the Dark Angel series as well, in celebration of the 35th anniversary of the series, actually released an entire art book for the series itself. So some of the art in here is a lot more modern because of the fact that it's something that the person actually worked on later for this celebration of the anniversary. And on top of that, some of the people he got to work on the book as well were fairly big back in the day as well. For example, the art over here beside the cosplayer, this was actually done by Akatsu Yutaka, the person who was in charge of the Gengar for the Shinseiki Gundam X manga as well, the After War Gundam X as well. So you actually do have people who, and if I'm not mistaken, he's actually working as a character designer lecturer in the university in Osaka as well right now. So you actually have some fairly big people who work on some fairly big things in the industry also working with him together on this book. In a way, it reminds me a lot of the Kaminomi book, where you really had a combination of many artists coming together to celebrate the series as well as the anniversary for it. The big difference for it is just the fact that with this one, it's more of just specific art contributions rather than a story that flows from start to end drawn by multiple people like a telephone game. But that said, I don't know, for me personally, mainly like this art design, especially like for the cover art itself, which was done by Asami Akia, the creator of the series itself, actually is something that I really do enjoy. This is something about the 90s, 80s like art and the coloring that just feels very different, and to me that is something that it just hits a lot differently sometimes. Maybe I'm just old since some people don't like it, but who knows. Aside from that, there was actually a book that someone shared with me before that I couldn't actually figure out where they actually got the book at the time, because I didn't check who the creator of the book was, but I actually found it at this event as well. And it is an analysis book that was actually like I'm not joking, like it's mostly just text and analysis of like many different series, and it basically goes through the history of how female children in anime have been depicted in animes targeting female children. So like for female kids animes, how have they actually depicted children in those animes that are meant to target them, as well as how that has changed and evolved over time. It's actually a very interesting read. I think there might be a translated version out there on the internet for those of you who are interested in it, but it actually basically goes through how many themes within animes that were actually designed to target kids were actually written for. So basically things like how school itself was depicted in anime across the years when it came to specifically anime that was targeting female children. So things like how friendship as well is depicted across all the different series out there, from Precure to Doremi as well all the way to Azuki-chan. So there's a lot of it, especially in the Magical Girl series that were actually more targeted towards kids back in the day. A lot of how a lot of the characters were depicted and the history of a lot of that is actually written in this book. So for people who are interested in things like this regarding the history of anime and how it has changed over time, especially in specific genres, this was actually a interesting niche book about it that was pretty cool to actually find a physical copy of. Aside from that, I actually did find a thin book, which I don't think I can show this one actually. I don't think I can. I'm gonna get banned off of YouTube. But yeah, what initially caught my eye with this circle, which basically just does a lot of Doujin content across the board, is the name of the circle. I don't know how well it gets across, but it's called Kimagure Jesus. So it's a circle called, I guess in a way, like fickle or like whimsical Jesus. I don't know why either, but either way, they actually do a lot of content just in general, focused on more retro character art in general and series. So they were actually at the most recent Wonder Fest with a new figure that they had released as well. And with this book, it's basically focused on some of the older dating sim visual novels, and the art itself was really good. Honestly, like I can't show more than this, I think, but the art actually captures a lot of the older years of visual novels, some of the characters in an illustration book featuring things from Tokimeki Memorial to Two Heart, which is over there as well. It gives it a bit of a modern spin in terms of the way it's colored and drawn, while also trying to keep as much to the aesthetic of the era as possible. So I found that blend to be really interesting. The book's a little sussy, so I can't show that one on YouTube, or I'll get sent to the YouTube shadow realm by some spooky AI or something. So we're just gonna leave it at that for now. That said, like many of the other small to medium-sized events, they also did have like a Shikishi display area, which is basically being used for a Shikishi giveaway that will be done at the end of the actual sales period of the event, which felt a little bizarre to me considering the huge number of Shikishis already being sold at the event. You could even get Asamiya Kia, the artist for Dark Angel's signature and actual like physically signed Shikishi for 60,000 yen. So like it feels like there's a bit of a mismatch between the Shikishi event and the stuff people are selling at the event. But either way, it was pretty cool because you just got a nice compilation of the art up on the board there. Although at the time I was there wasn't all too much up, and that's probably in part because of the fact that so many circles were already selling their own Shikishis as well anyway, but who knows. And aside from that, there was also a prize corner where they just had a whole bunch of stuff laid out on the table, which you could basically win if you take part in the event survey. This is also another thing that many of the other events, like even Ponycat as well, Superhero in Time, have those, where within the pamphlet you also get a survey about the event that you can just like fill in to let them know how much you enjoyed it and what you think could be improved with it. And basically at the end of the event, this will be used in the prize giveaway of all of the random stuff that people basically donated to the event itself as well. Although I would say that the stuff that you could win, I guess it's the same for all of the other small to medium-sized events as well, where there's just a whole bunch of random things that sometimes don't even really have anything to do with the event itself. Like I think there were just like random plushes and figures for characters that aren't even from that era. You had a Blu-ray of Mad Max because reasons, I guess, and many other things at the spot. So if you actually stayed till the end of the event and you actually wanted to participate in all of that, that's a thing you could do as well. Unfortunately, I was on a bit of a rush on that day, so I didn't manage to stay for this segment, but it's pretty interesting to see that this part of the culture is something that even for some of these other smaller events that coming up on their own, they're also doing it to this level as well. But yeah, aside from that, I think that's about all that I actually purchased at the event. There was actually a lot more, obviously, since there's 75 circles and all. There was quite a fair bit of adult content in particular, and I feel like that has in part to do with how a lot more in the past, especially when it comes to what you can depict in anime and manga, it was a lot more free and like open in general before a lot of the restrictions got kicked in over the past like 50-60 years. So there is a lot more content that was a lot more on the CC side as well, and so you do have a lot more people there doing art that tends to lean more into the more adult section as well. So I guess that's a part of the reason why there's a lot of that. Plus, you know, if you're into like 60s 90s anime, you're probably fairly old anyway, you're boomer, so I guess it makes sense that you're probably interested more in that as well. But overall, a pretty interesting event, to me at least, to find out about. So thank you to the person who actually let me know about the event, both Hayden and Alchi, for this. I'm very interested to see how they go about doing the next iteration of the event. For those who are interested, it's running in May, on May the 6th to be exact, this year in Tokyo. So I wouldn't recommend coming specifically for just this event alone, but hey, if you happen to be in Japan or planning a trip to Japan in the near future, maybe if you're interested in this might be something you can check out as well. They do have a Twitter where they announce most of the new event releases as it comes, and for the actual pamphlet itself over here, they do actually have it on the last page when they are gonna do the next run of the event as well. So they do actually try to keep people in the know when the event is running, and yeah, if you're interested, I do recommend giving it a check out, as it does seem that at the very least there are still quite a lot of people, especially the people who worked on content, the otaku content itself during that era, that are actually turning out these events and still creating content for it. So that's really interesting to see. One thing that I did find to be a little bit funny was the fact that I think I did see some people, along with the content they had produced for this event, which is basically themed around these kind of this era of anime, you also have people there with like Girls and Panzers and Blue Archive books. So even going to an event for like 90s anime, it would seem I can't escape Blue Archive. So that was a little bit of a funny, since they just had it alongside their other books as well. I guess maybe you could say that this means that all Blue Archive fans are like fucking old. Yes, I'm talking about you, clearly not me, or I don't know why you think I am old. But that's it, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you all for watching. I hope this was an interesting video about a somewhat small but a little bigger than expected event celebrating an era of anime that you don't quite see as much nowadays, especially in the Doujin space. I feel like genuinely interested to see how many circles turned up at the next iteration of this event, since it seems like if they're gonna get the space that they want, it's gonna be a lot bigger than it is this time around. And it seems that for the next iteration of the event, which they couldn't do this time around, they are gonna plan a talk show as well as a live event by some of the animators from the industry during that era. So that might actually be interesting for the people who are interested in it. Maybe I'll go down to it and then update this video as well in the future when we actually get to see how much the event grows over time. But that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you to the very epic people who helped to support the channel, and thank you to everyone for watching. But that said, until next time, take care and bye-bye.